We begin in Japan with hopeful news for people waiting to get a coronavirus vaccine. The government is now aiming to give shots to anyone who wants them by October or November. Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide made the remark in the Diet on Wednesday.
In October or November, we want to finish vaccinating all the people who need or want to be vaccinated. I myself will lead all-out efforts to roll out vaccinations and contain the spread of infection.
Japan started inoculating healthcare workers in February before expanding that to the elderly. Companies and universities are set to lend a hand as things speed up. They'll be allowed to give jabs to their employees and students from June 21st. So far, about 10% of the population have received at least one dose. The Prime Minister and opposition party leaders also discussed the upcoming Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics. Japan's leader was questioned about whether the Games can be held safely.
You say you will protect the lives and health of the people while hosting the Olympics. Do you mean holding the Games will never trigger a spread of infection in the country that would threaten the lives and health of the public?
We need to take thorough antivirus and strict border control measures to ensure safety and security. By holding the Games, we want to demonstrate that the world can be united in the fight against the coronavirus and overcome this grave challenge.
How about using the opportunity to introduce a vaccine passport or a digital certificate that includes negative tests?
We are considering the matter.
The Olympics will start on July 23rd and the Paralympics will run from August 24th. And returning to that vaccination rollout, which continues to ramp up, the latest numbers show 25% of elderly citizens across the country have had their first shots. At a large-scale vaccination center in central Tokyo, people arrived to get their jabs as the temperature soared above 31 degrees. 6 mist machines were installed in the reception and waiting areas. The government has set up another large-scale vaccination site in Osaka. Officials say that about 205,000 people have been vaccinated at the two sites since they opened at the end of May. The state of emergency remains in effect in 10 prefectures, but the health minister says the weekly average of new cases has continued to trend down. Authorities across Japan confirmed more than 2,200 new infections on Wednesday. Joe Biden has set off on his first overseas trip as U.S. president. He's heading to Europe as he tries to rebuild transatlantic ties strained during the Trump era.
Strengthening the alliance, make it clear to Putin and to China that Europe and the United States are tight, and the G7 is going to move.
Biden will meet with G7 leaders in Cornwall, England. They'll discuss the global fight against the coronavirus pandemic. The rise of China and ways to help developing nations are also likely to be on the agenda. Later, he'll meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Switzerland. Meanwhile, a senior White House official says the president hopes leaders from the so-called Quad countries will meet later this year. The four nations are the United States, Japan, Australia, and India.
Our goal is to hold an in-person Quad meeting, very ambitious meeting here in Washington in the fall with all leaders in attendance.
The Biden administration wants the group to counter Beijing's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific. They last met online in March. The foreign and defense ministers of Japan and Australia have agreed to strengthen security cooperation between the two countries and shared concerns about China's maritime activities. The ministers held 2+2 talks online on Wednesday for the first time in about 2.5 years. In the meeting, Japan's foreign minister said the international order is facing a major challenge as strategic competition in the Indo-Pacific region heats up. His Australian counterpart echoed his view.
We are seeing growing pressure on the rules, the norms and the institutions that underpin stability in the Indo-Pacific. And indeed, COVID-19 has only exacerbated these challenges for countries around the world.
The ministers also discussed Beijing's increasing presence in the East and South China Seas.
We shared serious concerns about the situation in the East and South China Seas. We also agreed to strongly oppose any unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force.
As for further defense cooperation, Tokyo and Canberra confirmed that the SDF will be able to protect Australian military assets under Japanese security legislation. The two countries agreed to speed up arrangements to sign a new agreement that will allow the SDF and the Australian military to conduct joint drills and to provide disaster aid more smoothly. An expert says Japan is now Australia's second most important security partner after the U.S.
This kind of trend of increasing their defense relations or strengthening their defense relations has gained new momentum ever since the pandemic started, and China has become increasingly assertive in trying to promote its interests in the region.
Richardson says Australia realizes it's a middle power and it can't challenge China unilaterally on its own.
I think Japan really supports Australia's approach, and they both have very common concerns about China. And I think from Australia's perspective, Japan is going to be increasingly an important security partner in the region.
She says she thinks the two countries will continue upgrading this defense relationship. Turning to Myanmar, where clashes between armed civilians and the military in an eastern part of the country are escalating. The United Nations estimates that the fighting has left some 100,000 people internally displaced. The UN office in Myanmar has expressed concern about the rapidly deteriorating security and humanitarian situation in Kaya State. The office says security forces are indiscriminately attacking civilian areas and that people have been forced to flee, many into the forests. The UN says both the evacuees and people remaining in locations affected by ongoing hostilities are in urgent need of food, water, shelter, fuel, and access to health care. A representative of a local humanitarian group describes the situation as discouraging.
I see most of them were just lay down on the ground with very things like we call the waterproof. And also they are just trying to build like a small house by themselves wherever they have. You just hide it in the jungle with our experience of living in the jungle, such under the rainy conditions, with little source of the food, medicine, and water.
The UN is calling on all parties to urgently take the necessary measures and precautions to protect civilians. Authorities around the world have arrested over 800 suspects in a massive global sting using a secretly developed messaging app.
Hundreds of criminal organizations were using this platform. It has a good reputation among criminals. They mutually promoted it as the platform you should use for its absolute reliability.
From gangs to drug traffickers, more than 300 criminal groups in over 100 countries used the app without knowing it had been developed by the FBI and others. Law enforcement officers were able to monitor 27 million messages over more than a year. They seized over 30 tons of illegal drugs in the sting, as well as cash and cryptocurrencies worth nearly $50 million. It's time now for a check on world weather. People in parts of the United States are continuing to deal with tornadoes, large hail, and excessive amounts of heavy rain. Our meteorologist Sayaka Mori has the details.
Hello there. On Monday, a massive tornado appeared in eastern Colorado, causing structural damage. Take a look at this dramatic video. A tornado hit Firestone, Colorado, one of the most tornado-prone areas on Earth, on Monday. It destroyed 2 homes and traveled about 20 kilometers. It was rated an EF1 tornado, the second weakest category on the enhanced Fujita scale. Fortunately, no injuries have been reported. There were several more tornadoes reported in the eastern United States on Tuesday, and in fact, more tornadoes could occur in the north and also the south because of very unstable weather conditions. Very heavy rain is hitting the south along the Mississippi River Valley. Nearly 200 millimeters of rain has fallen during a short period of time. So very bad conditions will continue across the north and also the southern areas of the United States. Temperatures soared to 36 degrees in parts of western Japan on Wednesday, and because of heat stroke, several high school students were taken to hospitals. Hot weather will continue into Thursday, with high of 30 degrees expected in Tokyo on Thursday. Osaka could see 31 degrees. Enjoy sunny weather while you can, because we might see a rainy season onset next week in Tokyo. Now, in Siberia, a dog was rescued on Arctic sea ice. Take a look at this footage. A fluffy dog was rescued by Russian sailors after it wandered away from its home village. Sailors on a Russian icebreaker noticed the pet and chose to get it out of harm's way. The animal was not only in danger of getting hit by ships, but also floating away because the ice had started to drift with many cracks on the surface. The owner had been looking for the 1-year-old Aika for more than a week, but they were happily reunited. That's it for me. Have a nice day.
American President Joe Biden starts his first foreign trip in office. Biden is to attend the G7 leaders meeting in Britain and meet Russia's leader during the 8-day trip. In Afghanistan, militants attacked the office of a Britain-based anti-landmine organization in Baghlan province, killing at least 10 people. European Union lawmakers approve a new travel document that will permit people to avoid coronavirus restrictions and tests. And in Japan, the chief of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics says all foreign athletes and media will be tracked electronically for 2 weeks.
US President Joe Biden has arrived in the UK on the eve of the G7 summit, his first overseas trip since his inauguration in January. The EU warns its relationship with the UK is at a crossroads over the implementation of post-Brexit trade rules in Northern Ireland. The Cornish village, which is used to welcoming tourists, now it's host to the world's leaders and thousands of police officers. The High Court rules that the government acted unlawfully when Michael Gove, the Cabinet Minister, awarded a COVID contract worth £500,000 to a firm run by friends of this man, the Prime Minister's former Chief Advisor, Dominic Cummings. The latest official figures show 8 out of 10 people have COVID antibodies. So what does that mean for a final lifting of restrictions? And a row between the Sussexes and a Buckingham Palace source over the naming of their new baby daughter. Now a warning from Harry and Meghan's lawyers.